Well, I know Joe Burrow, even though we haven't seen him for a while, he was back on the field throwing as the Bengals are in phase 2 of the 2024 offseason program. He missed the final 7 games of last year with a wrist injury that sparked a controversy that still gets Bengals fans triggered when we point out there was that video of him showing up in Baltimore for the Thursday night game with some sort of a device on his wrist and arm, and that's the wrist that ultimately went for good, and he was done for the year. And the Bengals, even though without him, they played better than expected with Jake Browning at quarterback, they didn't make it to the playoffs last year. The key is keep him healthy at all costs. If Joe Burrow is healthy, the Bengals are a factor in large part because they're one of the only teams in the league, and maybe currently the only team in the league, that can take down Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Everybody else struggles and fails. Tom Brady and Joe Burrow, the only two humans that have beaten Patrick Mahomes in playoff games.
Yeah, I mean, we know. I mean, one of the only negatives you could talk about with Joe Burrow in his career to this point is availability. That's the thing going forward here, and he's really had a struggle with that in his NFL career. So he knowing him a little bit, knowing the gym rat he is, the guy who's, we've talked about it before, changed his throwing motion, right? When I went there and visited him his rookie year, all of that, he's very self-aware. I heard him make comments recently about, I got to stay healthy and figure out what I'm going to do there. Whether that's add a few extra pounds of weight and armor to stay healthy or whatever, finding a better way to go into training camp healthy, but between the appendicitis, right, the pulled calf muscle last year, the torn, those are two that started before the year, right? So those were slow starts to a season because of that. We had the COVID-19, right? No camp that year, the ACL tear, and then, of course, last year, the wrist that you're alluding to. And I think it was his thumb that was hurt prior to that, but he was beat up. And, yeah, they got to fix that. He's got to fix that as best as he can, and how he wants to delve into that to make himself more available or be able to stay healthy the full season. And then, of course, the Bengals are doing their best to try to get that offensive line in a spot where, yeah, he doesn't take as many hits as he needs to, and he can stay healthy and make a real Super Bowl run.
He's never had a normal training camp experience without something derailing, delaying. It was the appendectomy, as you would have seen on the graphic. 2 years ago, it was the calf last year that slowed him down. And this year, looking good so far. And you're right, availability has been the one big kryptonite for Joe Burrow. Right. Because when he's healthy and he plays, he's as good as anyone in the NFL. And he's the one guy who doesn't shrink at the challenge of facing Patrick Mahomes. He gets in there toe-to-toe, and it's real. They had them. It felt like they had them in the AFC Championship to cap the 2022 season. It felt like, and but for Chris Jones, and this was one of the reasons why we were saying you better get Chris Jones paid and you better keep him, but for Chris Jones, the Bengals drive down the field and win that game.
Yeah, I hear you. No, I hear you. I mean, listen, last year we know they finished strong, even with Jake Browning. But I think you and I and most people that follow football, the night that Joe Burrow got hurt against the Ravens, we were kind of feeling going into that week like, here go the Bengals. It's a little bit of that early season struggle, which they got to fix that too, because he takes too many hits early in the season with their offensive line, their calls, how they want to pass things off. All that is just not greased up and hitting on all cylinders there. So that's part on the coaching staff where they got to figure that out, because we've seen that almost every year of his career. Slow start, they can't run the ball, he doesn't have that much time to throw the ball, and it progressively gets better, and it gets to a point where we get to week 12, 13, 14, and all of a sudden we start to go, ooh, the Bengals look like they might be one of the best teams in football. And that's what it felt like last year. It felt like it was going in that direction. And then, of course, he got hurt, and that stinks. But, yeah, to your point, Mike, I mean, yeah, he's special that way. He's Joe Cool. There's no doubt. I don't think there's no doubt in my mind that if you talk about clutch, not bothered by a moment, Other than Mahomes, Burrow's the guy you go to. Now, I think Josh Allen is right there. I don't think he folds with Mahomes either. I just don't think he has Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Joe Mixon and some of those guys to help him out a little bit. But to your point, yeah, Burrow ain't blinking. And Burrow's sitting there at home right now going, I want him. I want him this year. I want the Chiefs, and we want to take him down. And that's what makes it great, because they certainly don't shy away from that rivalry.
Here's Bengals quarterbacks coach Brad Cragthorpe on Burrow practicing, and this comes via Bengals.com. He looked as quick and athletic as I've seen him. He looked like the Joe Burrow we're used to seeing. I didn't see any difference. I thought the ball came out of his hand well. Confidently, I'm happy where he's at. And where he's at now is great. Staying there is the challenge, both throughout training camp, preseason. Don't play him in the preseason. Have him ready to go week 1. We'll find out soon enough when, where, and who they'll be playing week 1. Because that was my thought, too, when we first saw last year. That game, the rematch of the AFC Championship, is all the way on. It wasn't Christmas Eve. It was New Year's Eve, December 31. It's like, we're kind of hoping that everything's going to be fine.
I mean, you think about that. Think about that, right? You talk about, like, you got to be a little lucky, right, and all of that. Like, Kansas City getting their butts whooped on Christmas Day, and they get lucky and get a Joe Burrow-less Bengals on New Year's Day, where, I mean, again, the way they were playing at that moment, I mean, I'm never going to count the Chiefs out, but, I mean, it's not crazy to think, whoa, the Bengals might have gone in there and beat them with a healthy Joe Burrow. And what would happen with the Chiefs? Would they have been able to rebound and kind of recalibrate and get going, right? So, I mean, that just fascinating that way. But either way, great rivalry. Burrow's one of the best in the game. I want him back. We want him back. Slippery Joe is the man and one of the best quarterbacks in the sport. And, yeah, he's just got to stay healthy. And I'll be interested to see. I'm sure he'll dive into this a little bit in the offseason when somebody asks him, what are you trying to do to make sure you ensure your health and all of that? And he usually is pretty good about opening up and giving some pretty detailed answers.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.